annual BA Summit, the Southern Africa BA Summit, starting on the 3rd to the 5th of October 2022. So it's going to be up from Monday to Wednesday. And please, we want you to go on to the BA Summit SA hashtag or www.basummit.co.za to look for the details of the summit. We would like for you to join us live. The last time we went live was 2019, and it was a thrilling moment. So it's going to be a pleasure to have you. It's going to happen at Hilton Santin. It's going to be a one-day workshop on Monday and the 2-day conferences on Tuesday and Wednesday. We look forward to having you. The team is thriving in the next normal, and we have lots of speakers lined up, a lot of teams, and I'm sure you don't want to miss it. So please head on to www.basummit.co.za and register, and let's make this happen. Thank you. Also, I'll be just taking you through some rules of engagement for tonight, not hardcore rules as such, but just something to just help us to have a little bit of structure while we enjoy Dr. White. Please stay on mute unless you are clear to talk. But I think Dr. White specified that he welcomes anyone who wants to just ask a question while he's presenting. But please just raise your hand and then would take your question. It's going to be a very interactive session. It's going to be 45 minutes long. We hope that we don't take more than 45 minutes of your time. You may post your question in the main chat. We will read them. You might also raise your hand and feel free to interrupt Dr. White as he takes us through the importance of data analytics in business analysis. All right. At the end of the presentation, we're going to upload the video to IIBA YouTube, IIBA SA YouTube page, and you can use this link as you have. We'll also post the link in the chat. We do not send out the presentation deck, but definitely you can catch up with everything we're going to be discussing tonight on the link here on YouTube. Please, if you would like to present a tool and technique evening to the community, we would really be glad to have you. The tools and techniques evening is a Thursday kind of where we come together and we learn a lot about the tools, the capabilities, the skills that we need to perform optimally as business analysts. And I can say for myself that this has been really helpful to my growth and development as a business analyst. So please, if you would like to present, we would really welcome you. Please reach out to us on Durban@SouthAfrica.IIBA.org. Thank you. Also, we would welcome you to become a member if you are not part of us yet. We would want you to be a part of us. Let's do life together. There are a lot of perks that you get to enjoy from being a registered member of IIBA South Africa, and we will get into that. You can use the link here on the screen, IIBA.org Business Analysis Membership Individual, to join us and see for yourself, come see for yourself how we do life together and how we get to strengthen one another's core. One of the benefits that you enjoy as a member is access to our online library, where you can get almost 11,000 plus titles, access to member exclusive webinar, to PDF publications, articles, industry papers, and reports. You also have opportunities to connect with other members at local and international conferences and chapters. This is invaluable. You have exclusive access to the global community of business analysts, educators, thought leaders, mentors, and coaches. And you have a saving of up to 40% on globally recognized professional certificates. You also have discounts on conferences. I think I'm so grateful to IBA for the discounts on the conference. Thank you so much for that. So there are a lot of perks for joining us, and we hope that you just make an informed decision and become a part of us. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the presentation. Before we hand over to Dr. White, let me just quickly do an introduction of who Dr. Michael White is. Dr. Michael White is the founder of the Business Analysis Doctor, and he is a global award-winning business analysis and certification training provider. And you would agree with me that we there is no better person to bring us this webinar this evening. I think we outdid ourselves by being able to bring Dr. White here tonight. He has been a business analyst practitioner for over a decade and has been driving innovation at a lot of top financial institutions in the United States. He holds a doctorate in business and administration, as well as CBAP, AAC, CBDA, and CPOA designation from IIBA. He has contributed immensely to education and to guiding the certification and advancement of business analysts all over the world. I'm sure that a couple of us will have stumbled across this material online while, venturing into the world of business analysis. Tonight, we have the honor and the privilege for Dr. White to take us through the CBDA credentials from IIBA and to tell us about, what value we can get from being data-centric and what competences, how do we increase our competences with data analytics? He's going to be talking to us about CBDA benefits, who should take the CBDA, the requirement for the exam, the overview for the exam, and the top study tips for the exam. Dr. White, we are so glad and honored to have you tonight. Please take over from here.
All right. Thank you so much for that rave introduction. That was great. All right. So while I get the transition over, I do see that we have a hand raised. So if we wanted to let our participant ask their question while I get that in order, we can definitely take that question.
Belshia, if you can unmute yourself, you should be able to talk.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's happening. We're not talking.
Oh.
Maybe type it in the chat.
Okay. All right. So while we are waiting for that question, I'll go ahead and get us started. So welcome again, everyone, to our webinar today on business data analytics. Hopefully everyone can see my introduction slide here. So again, this is a certification that a lot of people are interested in. So I'm hoping it adds a lot of value to you all. And hopefully if there's any of you who are kind of on the fence as to whether or not this is a certification for you, hopefully this presentation will help come to an informed decision tonight. All right, so our agenda, we talked a little bit about this earlier. So we're going to talk about who the CBDA is for, the certification in business data analytics. Oh, you know what? I forgot to turn on my camera. Do that really quick. All right, there we go. All right, so then we're going to look at some benefits for the CBDA. We're going to take a look at some of the exam requirements, the exam blueprint, some top study tips from my perspective, as well as some top exam tips. So hopefully for those of you who are planning to take the exam, this will help give you a little bit more equipment to fuel your certification studying process. All right, so who should go for the CBDA? So essentially the CBDA is for any individual who wants to effectively perform analysis for data analytics initiatives, right? Including but not limited to business analysts, database analysts, data scientists, business intelligence analysts, right? So you can see that there's a large list of general roles that might be interested in the CBDA. So just so that I can kind of gauge our audience for today, go ahead and list your role. Are you a business analyst? Are you a data analyst, a data scientist? Go ahead and put in the chat what your role is that you're currently in. And if you want to talk about how you think the CBDA will be helpful to you, go ahead and add that as well. Okay. All right. Also, I want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits. So one of the main benefits, this was the reason why IIBA even started investing into a CBDA certification. First of all, you're going to be positioning yourself, right? The demand for business data analytics expertise is expected to grow by 12.8% per year throughout 2025. And as of right now, even in the last IIBA certification survey or survey salary survey that IIBA put out, 65% of respondents reported that they were already involved in data analytics efforts. So a lot of us who are in the space, in the business analysis space, are already doing data analytics work. So this type of training and certification would help us be more capable in what we're already doing. And some other benefits that were noted by IIBA is that a lot of organizations are seeing a 5x ROI on business data analytics projects versus traditional projects. So that means basically that the initiatives that are centered around data analytics and information are showing about 5 times the ROI compared to general, improvement projects. And then also organizations that are considered high performing in business data analytics efforts tend to use business analysts 93% more often. So that means that they're seeing better results by having these initiatives being led by BAs. Not being biased, but that's just what the statistics show. Also, organizations with BDA efforts led by business analysts are seeing a 3x ROI compared to initiatives led by other disciplines like maybe development or something of that nature. All right, so let's talk about some of the skills that you're going to be gaining. So most of you who have been investigating the certification by now, you might know that there's going to be 6 major domains within the CBDA or that are housed within the Guide to Business Data Analytics. And that includes identify the research question, sourcing data, analyzing data, using results to influence business decision-making, interpreting and reporting results, and then guiding organizational level strategy for business data analytics. Now, for us, the skills that we're going to be looking for are actually housed within the tasks that are kind of identified throughout those domains. So tasks that are involved in the research question would be defining a problem or opportunity, identifying and understanding stakeholders, right? Current and future state analysis, formulating a research question, and planning business data analytics approaches. And then we've got sourcing data, right? So that's where we're going to be planning data, determining the data sets, and collecting and validating that data. So a lot of these things are things that you may or may not do, but we're going to figure out how to do them better or according to more best practices, right? And then analyzing data, you're developing data analytics plan, preparing and exploring data, and performing data analysis. So this is the space where most traditional business analysts, where we don't do this quite as much. So for me, particularly, this was more of the biggest learning curve for me was actually exploring data, cleansing it, and things of that nature. Then we've got interpreting and reporting results. So this is where we're validating our understanding of the stakeholders, planning communication, deriving insights from the data, documenting and communicating findings, right, from the completed analysis. So the skills in this set, these are a lot of the things that we're already doing, right? So from this perspective, we're going to be looking at how to apply these skills to data analytics efforts. And then we're going to also want to use the results to influence business decision-making, right? Pretty straightforward. That's recommending actions, developing an implementation plan. If that's not something you've been involved in, that's definitely something that would be worth understanding and knowing the mechanics of that. And then we're having guide organizational level strategy for business analytics. So this is where we're really getting into where the BDA practitioner would be dealing more with the executives, right? We're going to be looking at developing organizational strategy, talent strategy, and data strategy. This was another area that was a good learning opportunity for me. Even though I have been in a lot of roles where I dealt with executives, but looking at things like a data strategy and data governance, that was more of a newly acquired skill for me. So I think that's another reason why this certification shines is because it would kind of highlight a lot of the skills that maybe the typical business analyst might not be privy to. And on the flip side, if you are more of a data analyst or a data scientist, it also covers those traditional BA things like current and future state analysis. So it would give someone that's more on the data end a lot more exposure to the business side of things. So those are the skills that you will be getting from that perspective. All right. All right, so let's look at some exam requirements. So many of you may have seen this online, so I won't take a lot of time on this, but you may have noticed that the CBDA does not have a lot of the requirements that like the CBAP or the CCBA has. So you don't need to show your work experience or the knowledge area experience, any professional development or references. The only thing you need for the CBDA application is you have to sign the code of conduct and get familiar with the exam pattern. So the exam pattern is 2 hours long. There are 75 multiple choice questions. Those questions are scenario based, and we're going to look at a couple of those later. And it is web delivered. So this will be proctored by PSI. So you don't have to even leave the comfort of your home. You just have to, abide by the remote exam proctoring rules, right? Typically, students are reporting that they're spending somewhere between 70 and 80 hours of study time. Some people do more, some people do less. Everybody learns differently, but this is just a general range of that. All right, let me just take a look at some of the questions we have. All right. What's the similarity between these skills and action research? A lot of them do overlap. Action research, to me, is a little broader, right? These skills, a lot of them are more specific to how we are interacting with data. So I think really it's just the lens that you're looking at, right? Because I feel like, action research can be broader than just, data and, information and things like that. Leon says, okay, so Leon's a business analyst in industrial engineering, good. Lots of quantitative analysis, good. All right. So let's move on to the blueprint. I did want to talk about the blueprint a little bit because I feel like the blueprint that's communicated through IIBA isn't 100% comprehensive. So as you can see, these are the 6 domains we went over. So identify research question is 20%, so that's 15 questions. Sourcing data is going to have 11 questions. Analyze data is going to have 12 questions. Interpret and report results is going to have 15 questions. Use results to influence business decision-making, it's going to be 15 questions. And then guide company level strategy for business analytics is going to be 7 questions. So as you can see, the focus is going to be mostly on identifying the research question, interpreting and reporting results, as well as using results to influence business decision-making. And most of you will know that these are kind of the skills that are mostly aligned with traditional business analytics work anyway. So that's kind of good because that means we would have a little more exposure. What I wanted to emphasize was that underlying competencies and techniques are not listed on the blueprint, but they are on the exam for sure. So don't think that you don't have to study the techniques or the underlying competencies that are mentioned, because they are definitely, intertwined between, mixed up in these domains somewhere. So you definitely want to understand those concepts as well. Now, in terms of exam scoring, I know someone's probably going to ask me this, so I'll just go ahead and cut to the chase. IIBA doesn't exactly give us the cut scores, but they do tell us that they score each domain separately. So you'll have 6 separate scores. IIBA does have a cut score for each domain, as well as an overall cut score. So in order to pass the exam, you'll have to meet the cut score for each domain as well as the overall cut score. Okay, again, IIBA does not disclose what those cut scores are, but it's generally speculated that it's around 70 to 75% in each of those domains. Okay, what IIBA is going to show you is your performance in each domain relative to the minimum score of passing. Okay, so it'll be presented to you as either higher, comparable, or lower. It has been communicated to me that you typically need to perform at a comparable or higher level in order to pass the exam in all of the domains. Now, I have heard of candidates getting lower in one of the domains and still passing. I've also heard of candidates getting comparable in all of the domains and still failing the exam. My assumption is that even though they were comparable in the domain, they didn't pass the overall cut score. So IIBA has communicated to me that you do need to be comparable in all of those domains. But like I said, that's what they communicated to me. I have heard from other people that have taken the exam otherwise. So just be prepared and err on the side of caution to aim for at least a 75 in overall, as well as a 75 in each of those domains. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's not that that clear. Leanna, I definitely can relate to that. I have seen some instructions that were, not so clear. So hopefully this webinar will give you a little bit more guidance on that. All right, did anybody have any questions on the exam blueprint or the scoring or anything like that before I moved on? All right. So study tips. The first thing I want to talk about is the resources. So the most of the exam is going to be sourced through the Guide to Business Data Analytics. So if you don't have this book, you need to get it. Okay, initially when the CBDA first came out, IIBA had these 2 white papers. One was from a practitioner's view and one was for the organizational level. They have since combined those white papers and presented that in the Guide to Business Data Analytics. Now, If you've read the white papers, you still need to read the Guide to Business Data Analytics because there were some updates made. So while the white papers might be helpful, the information has been updated. So you need to go based off of the Guide to Business Data Analytics, okay? Another thing is that IIBA has recommended some essential reading resources. This includes 27 articles that IIBA recommended that were, related to business data analytics. There are questions that are not in the Guide to Business Data Analytics that are in those articles. For those of you who take my courses and things like that, I specify the articles that you need to focus on because, if you want to go ahead and read through all 27 articles, do it. But for my students, I try to streamline that just so you know which articles that you need to focus on. And then another resource is the BABOK guide. Now, you don't need to read the entire BABOK guide. What you need to focus on is the techniques that are listed in the Guide to Business Data Analytics. The thing is, the Guide to Business Analytics lists some of these techniques at a very high level, and then they'll ask like a detailed question on the exam. So I was a little thrown by that. And the only reason I know that is because I am familiar with BABOK, but a person who hasn't read BABOK, you would have thought that maybe you just missed that information from the guide. Some of the stuff was not in the guide, but it was actually pulled from the BABOK guide. So I would recommend, as a part of your studying, to include the BABOK techniques chapter in your studying, as well as the BABOK underlying competencies chapter. A lot of those, a couple of those showed up on my exam as well. So again, in the Guide to Business Data Analytics, the underlying competencies are talked about at a very, very high level, very quickly, but then they'll turn around and ask a more detailed question on it. So I would recommend looking at the underlying competencies in the BABOK guide as well as a part of the resources. Okay, so more study tips, things to know, what you need to know, things to do, what to add on your to-do list. So first of all, be familiar with the CBDA exam pattern. So I talked a little bit about that, right? Just to reiterate that the underlying competencies and the techniques are also on the exam, in addition to, the 6 domains that they mention. Take a CBDA simulation. No, take multiple CBDA simulations. Please, if you do anything, do this. Please don't try to take the exam without taking simulations, okay? That's like the best method of taking any exam is taking simulations, right? To get familiar with that. I have some more resources on that further down the line. When you take the simulations, if you have a good simulator will also include answer explanations, okay? After you've taken those simulations a few times, be sure to document those explanations and study them individually, right? The explanations themselves is going to help you kind of understand the rationale behind the questions, and it'll help you try to, start seeing different patterns and things like that. Another thing you're going to want to do is to formulate a data analytics glossary. If you're not currently a data analyst or a data scientist or someone who's like a data expert, I highly recommend creating a glossary of terms that are not familiar with you throughout the Guide to Business Data Analytics, as well as the articles. When I was studying for the exam, I had to take these words and create a glossary because the guide presents these terms without defining some of them, right? So we need to be able to clearly determine these terms in order to fully be able to understand some of the questions that are asked on the exam. So like I said, if you're not an expert in in data, then you definitely need to do that. So like words like data lake or linkages, you really need to, you might hear them a lot, but you need to understand the definitions as well. So definitely do that. If like, again, if you take some of my courses, you'll know that I do include a data analytics glossary as well. Okay, so taking a CBDA exam prep course. So if you're a person who needs a more structured approach to studying, I definitely recommend taking a CBDA course, especially if you're also interested in learning more about those skills, right? If you're doing self-study, that's great. But if you're more interested in kind of increasing your capabilities and a lot of those skills that we talked about, I would definitely recommend taking an actual course that's going to be highlighting some of those as well. Okay. It'll definitely help you feel a lot more confident. Then next, also create a study schedule. It's basically, determining how long you're going to be studying, right? So like I recommended, some people go between 70 and 80. So you can use that as a gauge, but you need to look at the days of the week and determine how many days out of each week you're going to be able to study, right? And then for each day, how many hours are you going to study, right? So in this example, I'm able to study 15 hours a week. And this example actually came from a CBAP. So if I was doing like 200 hours of total study time for 15 hours a week, that's about 13 weeks, right? So for the CBDA, like I said, you'll probably need to do about 80 hours or more, depending on how much you study. So we'll say 15 hours a week at 80 hours, right? That's going to be about, maybe 6 weeks or so, or however, whatever that the math is on that. So this will also let you know how far out you need to schedule your exam, or at least give you some type of gauge, right? And you also want to give yourself some cushion as well. Okay, time management. If you're taking notes, take notes on this. You need to manage your time on the exam. The exam is 2 hours long. There's 75 questions. Leave about 20 minutes to review questions that you are marking for review. You can mark questions for review on the exam. You do not get penalized for negative answers. There's no negative marking, okay? So that means if you don't know the answer, take a guess and mark it for review and move on, okay? So I recommend typically about 80 seconds per question. That's about 1.3 minutes. If you can't answer it in that time, again, mark your best guess, mark it for review, and move on. This is because you want to make sure that you're not spending a lot of time on the questions at the beginning, and then towards the end, you're not able to even read the questions, right? Because those could be questions that might be easier that you knew the answer to, but if you are just kind of run out of time, you don't even get the chance to read them. So don't spend too much time. So I know you can't just say, oh, 80 seconds. So what you should expect is about 45 questions in that first hour. So after the first hour of the exam, you should have 45 questions answered, okay? Again, this is to leave about 20 minutes to review the questions that you've marked for review, all right? All right, so now let's look at things to know on the exam, right? This is where you're going to want to take some more notes if you're not already. You need to know the data analytics perspectives. And again, these are coming from things that are not necessarily on the blueprint, right? So this is actually coming out of the Introduction to Business Data Analytics chapter. So yes, you do need to go through that introductory chapter as well, because there are questions on that. So understanding the data analytics from the perspective of movement, capability, data-centric activity sets, all those things. You also need to know the data analytics cycle, right? So the sequence of how this cycle works. What I found of the exam is that there are cases where they might ask you, if the data isn't right, or if something's not going well, what step in the process do we need to go back to, right? So you need to understand how to take recursive actions by going back. So just getting familiar with the sequence of the analytics cycle, and just kind of understanding the sequence of some of the tasks that are within the guide will be very helpful to you as well. Know the data analytics methods. This table here, you need to know that. I had several questions that came up regarding these analytics methods. Be able to define them, also be able to identify examples of them. So if they give you an example, you need to be able to determine which method that they're talking about. In general, you need to know the purpose of each task and each domain. Okay, so that's something you want to document as you're going through the guide. It's not necessarily specifically highlighted, but in your study notes and things like that, all the purposes of the domains, the tasks, and I would even say the techniques as well. Again, you need to know the data analytics techniques from the guide, as well as some techniques from the BABOK guide. So I talked a little bit about that earlier. Just wanted to reiterate that in case anyone missed it. All right, so another thing you're going to want to know is the role that both the business analyst plays in all of the tasks, as well as the role that the data analyst or the data scientist plays. There's three roles that are focused. The BA, which they call the BA practitioner, then there's the data analyst, and then there's the data scientist. Those are the three roles that are focused on throughout the guide. There's several other roles mentioned, developer, things like that, the journalists, all those roles, but those are the three roles that you need to focus on: the business analyst, the data analyst, as well as the data scientist. Know what those roles do in each task. And then finally, you need to know the visualizations and the charts and graphs in the exam or in the guide. Both in the guide as well as in the articles. There are so many visualizations and charts that I had to name and interpret. Not only do you need to be able to identify them, you need to be able to interpret these. So you will need to spend a lot of time on that. And again, it's just not the charts and graphs within the guide. There's also some within the articles you need to be paying attention to as well. All right. Also, there are quite a bit of statistical questions that you're going to need to know. So anything that's statistical, central tendency, distributions, hypothesis testing, all those things, you need to have a clear understanding of how those things are calculated, the definitions of those things, the categories of data types. All those are the things that you definitely are going to need to understand. All right. Any questions before I move on to my next slide? Everybody good? Okay. All right, so let's do a little bit of practice. So this is a little bit interactive. So I just pulled a couple of questions from the IIBA website. This is from the data analytics section. That they do give you some sample questions. So I just pulled a couple just to give you all a little bit of practice. So I do want you all to attempt these in the chat. There's only 2. So attempt these questions in the chat when they come up. I'm only going to give you about 80 seconds because, again, I might give you a little longer, but because, again, that's the time you'll need to do these on the exam. Liam is asking, do you have to be certified in any BA certifications to successfully do the data analyst certification? You don't have to. If you study appropriately and you've got the right information, you don't have to. I did find that having my CBAP helped me a lot when taking the exam. And I also found that my Six Sigma Green Belt certification helped me a lot when taking the exam. Again, not a requirement. It's just that it was just overlapping information that made the exam a little easier for me. But again, if you're not certified in those things, just use the appropriate study material and then you should be fine. But as far as being able to apply, definitely not a requirement. All right, so here's our first question. Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. I'll give you just a little bit over a minute to answer. Don't be embarrassed if you don't get the answer right. I just want you all really to see, just get a little bit of exposure as to the type of questions if you haven't already done so. Okay, I got a C. Got an A, got a B. All right, we got a few answers there. B. All right, I'll give you about 10 more seconds. All right. All right, so our answer here was actually B, okay? So these were our keywords here. So our first keyword here was sales objective. And then our second keyword was effectiveness at making a sale. So again, this is something that you kind of just had to understand. Of course, some of us that might have sales experience may have just known this, but the answer was B because the average time for conversion is a metric, a sales metric or a sales KPI that does measure the effective of making a sale, right? So the faster you can convert a lead to a sale, the better off you're doing, right? Now, the answer to this is not something you're going to get from the guide. This was actually presented in one of the articles on KPIs. So I wanted to demonstrate this because I want to emphasize that you don't need to only read the guide, you also need to read those articles as well. Yeah, that I can definitely understand that over the 3-year period, it kind of leads you down that direction, right? For sure. So yeah, that's definitely some of the things that you have to think about when we're answering these questions. But I think, like I said, I think once you have more exposure to the content, certain things will start to jump out at you. All right, let's do one more. All right, and you can start now. Okay, I got a C. Okay, got a few C's, good. Got an A, good. All right, C's and A's. Anybody think anything that's not C or A? All right, let's see. Okay, I got a D, awesome. Let's see. All right, so our answer here was C. So our keywords here were data sources and data quality dimension. So consistency is a data quality characteristics that keeps data the same across resources. So this comes from one, knowing a lot of the quality metrics or characteristics, but also knowing those definitions. So for me, just because I know the definition of consistency, knowing that things are the same across different data sources is what jumped out at me. Okay, so this is why terminology and that glossary is going to be very important for the exam. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for you all today. I would like you all to know that if you are studying for the CBDA exam, I do have 4 ways for you to do that, right? You can take a live course, which starts December the 10th. We have an on-demand option. We also have self-study training as well as simulations. So if you want to learn more about that, you can definitely go to thebadoc.com and click on training and then all courses, and it will lead you to that path. Or you can just follow this link here that I put in the chat. And also, as a thank you for those of you who are joining us today, I want to offer you all 25% off any of our products related to the CBDA. This is any live course, any bundle, anything that's related to the CBDA. I'm offering 25% off today only, though, only until midnight Eastern time, my time. So it's almost 2 o'clock here, so you got about 10 hours. But after midnight, it deactivates, so the 25% off will not be active after midnight. So if you email me afterwards, I'm sorry, it's not available after midnight my time. So the discount code or the coupon code is South Africa. So again, that's any course related to the CBDA. I do have bundles with AAC and CBDA and other certifications with the CBDA. Those are included as well. As long as you see CBDA on that product, it's eligible for the 25% off discount. Again, that ends at midnight Eastern Daylight Time. You're very welcome, Melissa. All right. Now, thanks again. If you want to connect with me on social media, these are all of my handles. So you can find me here. And I guess at this point, we can open up the floor for any additional questions. or comments anybody has at this point.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. White. That was a very brilliant one. Thank you for bringing in a lot of clarity to the, otherwise obscure areas when it comes to the certification. We're so glad, and thank you for taking your time. We know, it's 2 a.m., right? Is it a.m. or p.m.?
Oh, here it's 2 p.m. here.
2 p.m. 2 p.m. Also, thank you for giving us a part of your time today. We are so grateful. Please, do we have any question, any contribution? We have something here that says anyone who knows how or where we can get Bible Guide, the cheapest one, please. Dr. White, do you have any idea where people can actually get a Bible Guide for cheap? And
yeah.
even the
well, if you're an IIBA member, you get it for free, actually. So you can, if you're a member, you can download it from the IIBA website, the PDF version. The only other place I really know where to get it outside of IIBA's website is Amazon, but that's not really that much cheaper than getting on the website. I will say that for individuals that take our live courses, we do provide a complimentary copy of the BABOK Guide PDF. But those are the only places that I know. I'm not sure if other people know of any other places.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Roy. Also, I would like to add that during the summit in 2019, I was able to buy my own hard copy of IIBA for about 900 Rand. I don't know how much it's going to be selling for right now, but you can also get a copy if you do decide to join us for the IIBA Summit. Do we have any question before we bring the day to an end? Any question from anybody? Any contribution? Okay. Dr. White, we have a lot of thank yous and appreciation. We really do value you and value your contribution. We hope that we'll meet you in our life journey when we do decide to go for the certification. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you for spending your evening with us. We hope that you got value for your time. We hope to see you for the next tools and techniques evening, and possibly for the IIBA Summit on Monday. Please do take care.